Recently, I'd been on the hunt for a dedicated cycle computer for my gravel bike, but wasn't really convinced or wasn't really sure if I actually needed one, because I have been recording all my sporting activities, including my bike riding, on my Garmin wristwatch up until now. And I had a couple of criteria that I was looking for. These are GPS functionality to record and map my ride, heart rate sensor capability, GPS navigation ability. More specifically, I wanted that and to test that feature on a 4-day gravel bike ride with friends that I've just done up in the north of New Zealand. And also I would like it to have connectivity with my Garmin Connect app, which is the app that I've been using for a few years now for recording my sporting activities. So the obvious choice was the Garmin range of cycle computers, and more specifically I'd kind of narrowed it down to the Garmin Edge 540. However, the price of that unit here in New Zealand, and I'll just check my notes on that one, has a recommended retail of $899 or US $445. You could get them cheaper as they have been superseded, and the cheapest I saw it on special was for New Zealand $600. Now that's a fair chunk of change, and I still wasn't fully sure whether I actually needed a dedicated cycle computer, because I ride mainly for fitness and social riding with my mates. So after a wee hunt around on the internet, like we all do, I ended up on AliExpress and on a cycle computer company called iGPSport. And I ended up purchasing the iGPSport BSC300T. So this had a recommended retail price of approximately New Zealand $230 or US $125 with the Garmin style out front mount as an optional extra. So approximately a third of the price of the Garmin Edge 540. So what is it? The iGPSport BSC300T is a small touch screen or color touch screen cycle computer, GPS cycle computer, very similar in terms of size and specs to the Garmin Edge 540. It has a 2.4 inch color screen which has a 240 by 320 pixel display. It has an IPX7 water resistance rating and is slightly smaller and lighter than the Garmin Edge 540. It has an advertised battery life of approximately 20 hours and a wide range of connectivity to sensors and bike components. It also has a dedicated app for syncing to the computer, and you can use this for route planning and syncing with Komoot to download navigation routes or configuring the settings of the unit. It can auto-sync to Strava and Komoot, but not to Garmin Connect, which I'll talk about later. It also has hill profiles and live segment tracking and many other features, which I wasn't particularly interested in at this stage. I'll leave a link to this specific model on the iGPSport website so you can browse through the specs. So as I mentioned earlier, I had a good chance to test this out recently on a 4-day gravel bike trip I did with a bunch of friends. The two main features I wanted for this trip were obviously its GPS capabilities to measure our distance each day, and also I was really keen to try the navigation ability of it. We had the route planned in Komoot, and then obviously I could download and sync the bike computer to the Komoot route, so I was keen to try the navigation and see how it went. The route we were riding was a mixture of gravel roads, sealed roads, and a little bit of single track. Amongst my friends, the computer affectionately became known as Timu, and I was often asked which direction Timu would like us to go now when we came to an intersection, and to be fair, it didn't miss a beat. So my observations after those 4 days were as follows. The display was pretty easy to read, even though it's not the biggest, and even in the midday sun I still had no problems reading the display. In hindsight, if I was doing a really long trip where navigation was key, I would have probably gone for the bigger, more dedicated navigation unit, because the small screen was fine for this trip, but it was a little hard to read sometimes, and sometimes the specific road names or the smaller road names were not displayed on the GPS map display. Battery life wasn't an issue, and we did a couple of 8-hour days, some quite long days, and pretty much at the end of even those longer 8 to 9 hour days, I still had at least 50 to 60% of battery life left. The GPS recording of our distance and time, or moving time, seemed to be pretty accurate, because there's a few of my friends on this ride had Garmin units, and it seemed to be pretty much in sync with what these other computer units were showing. And as I mentioned, the navigation actually worked really well, and it didn't really miss a beat. Even when we came to some quite tricky crossroads where essentially it was a gravel road and it was almost a single track going off a four-way intersection, it still managed to pick the right pick the right route and show me which direction to go. It doesn't have... Sometimes the only gripe though is when you are off course. It basically just tells you that you are off course and has an arrow sort of pointing in the direction to where the course is. It doesn't have specific turn-by-turn instructions to get back on course, but it still wasn't an issue finding my way back to the downloaded route that we were using. I didn't get to use the heart rate functionality on this trip because I wasn't too fussed about that. But on my local training rides, I have managed to pair very easily actually a Wahoo chest strap, and also my Garmin can actually broadcast its wrist heart rate reading to the unit as well. So it connects pretty easily to the wee head unit here. We had a range of weather conditions on this trip, and we had a couple of very wet, in particular one very wet day. The touch screen works pretty well with gloves, but I guess like a lot of touch screens, when it was wet, it was a little bit fiddly to use. But you can use the buttons instead, so you can use the touch screen or the buttons on the side to navigate through the different menus. Now, as I alluded to earlier, probably the biggest con or negative for this unit for me personally is that it doesn't sync automatically with Garmin Connect, which is my chosen platform of choice, if you like, for recording my sporting activities. And that's mainly because I've had this Garmin Fenix 5 watch for a number of years now. Now, there are ways around it, and I did do it. So basically, I just opened up the iGPSport app at the end of the day, and you can download the GPX file of the route and then upload it to your Garmin Connect. It's a little bit fiddly, but wasn't a big deal. And as I mentioned earlier, if Strava is your app of choice for recording all your activities, then it's not an issue as it will auto-sync to Strava. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the wee iGPSport cycle computer, and it does more than I need it to do, and it performed flawlessly on that 4-day gravel bike trip. It would be great if it auto-synced with Garmin Connect, and perhaps if I was doing a lot of navigation, a bigger display would be better, and perhaps choose a different model, which they have if you look on their website. But bang for buck, it is hard to beat that when it is essentially a third of the price of the Garmin. That's it from me. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.